acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are gathered on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe and Potawatomi and Adawa peoples. We recognize the crimes that were committed against the indigenous people of the land when it was colonized by European forces and bandits. We recognize the pain and betrayal the indigenous people have felt when the US government abrogated several treaties with the Indian tribes. We recognize their enduring connection to this territory and express respect for their resistance. As immigrants to this land, now known as Michigan, we honor the histories and cultures of the indigenous peoples across all occupied land, past and present, and pledge that we will stand with the oppressed and fight against occupation and ethnic cleansing and genocide everywhere and every time till peace pervades earth. Disclaimer, this event serves as a neutral platform for all the exchange of ideas, discussions, and engagement on the topics of public interest. It's not intended to promote, endorse, or support any specific political candidate or party. The information shared during this event is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement or recommendation of any political candidate, party, or campaign. The sponsors of this event are committed to maintaining a non-partisan stance and fostering an environment where diverse viewpoints can be expressed and respected. The speakers in this event, including myself, do not necessarily speak on behalf of any of the sponsors or organizing. They only speak on behalf of themselves. We have sent an email to all presidential candidates to speak at this event and open the door for them to come at any time after this event to express their own point of view. We would like to thank all the sponsors listed on the event invitation. If you want to see a recording of this event afterwards, please, you will find it at dearbornblog.com. Ladies and gentlemen, today is an anti-genocide rally with a very honorable guest, a person who has stood since October 7 against the continuing of the genocidal campaign that is taking place in Gaza. Half a year of genocide in Gaza. 39,178 Palestinians have been killed. 14,622 children have been murdered. 73,300 have been injured. Countless others under the rubble. 2.2 million facing starvation. 7,490 Palestinians have been kidnapped from the West Bank. 3,500 Palestinians are being held without charge in administrative detention in violation of Geneva Convention. 6 months of starving children carrying their dead baby siblings on their shoulders. 6 months of mothers singing to dead children in their hands, and children crying at the mass graves of their dead parents. 6 months of a mostly silent word. 6 months of the destruction of all values of justice, humanity, democracy, and civilization. 6 months of destruction of every international law, every section of the Geneva Convention, every article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, every word of the American Declaration of Independence. We gather here today to declare beyond doubt our condemnation of the genocide taking place in Gaza by the Netanyahu government and the largest terrorist organization in the world, the IDF. We gather here to condemn the White House and Congress that have been influenced heavily by AIPAC, who are not only partners, but also enablers of the genocide that's being committed publicly, intentionally, and under the observation and international community and history by the extreme right government ever seen in Israel. Our government is filled today with what can be seen as war criminals. Every wall is tainted with blood of children. What more can we say, and what more can we do? There's so much that we are doing and so much that we can do, but the minimum we can today as Americans is becoming clear about one thing. As Caitlin Johnston puts it, a political party which views opposing an active genocide as a fringe extremist position is not a political party that should continue to exist. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and this is my opinion, have committed war crimes that no longer allows us the possibility of considering working in or with such parties. A party whose 100% of senators vote against ceasefire, I can't see it except as an evil act. You vote against ceasefire, and then you go sleep at night knowing that your vote is literally killing children that night. How can you sleep? When I used to work in a school, if I issued a suspension of a kid in accordance to state policy, but questioned the harm that may affect him or her, I couldn't sleep that night. How can you sleep when you send bombs to kill children at night and you see their corpses in the morning on your phone or social media? I just don't understand if humanity is okay. But because we are in this room together, we reinforce our humanity. And we know that there is so much to be done for us to wake up. Many of us didn't know that America is a multi-party country, and there are more than 2 parties in the country. No matter how much is that fact suppressed. Today, we are honored to have with us the Green Party presidential candidate, Dr. Jill Stein, who has been a very strong and vocal voice for immediate ceasefire and a voice for justice and peace in the world, as Green Party is well known to represent everywhere around the globe. We are going to hear from her today, and then we will have a question and answer session open with you. But first, I would like to open this evening with a word of welcome by Imam Ilahi, who has generously opened the Islamic House of Wisdom for this event. And if you know Imam Ilahi, you know he is a man who has been fighting for peace, justice, coexistence, and love all his life. Since I have known him back in the early 90s, Imam Ilahi has been a voice of wisdom and justice, bringing people together, bringing faiths together, giving the best advice to the American administration, and being a voice of justice and peace around the world. He and the Board of Islamic House of Wisdom has made the center a center for social justice and peace. And there is no better place to be tonight fighting injustice and genocide than in this house of wisdom, this house of God. Help me welcome Imam Ilahi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salam wa rahmah. Peace and blessing. And thank you, Hajj Wassam, for your generous words and also beautiful presentation. It is a great honor to welcome Dr. Jill Stein, a great lady, a great leader with a great journey, a journey of justice and rejection and fighting against injustice, oppression, occupation, and arrogance. She is traveling, speaking, working hard, tirelessly, since this genocide started in Gaza. Obviously, this started 76 years ago. Genocide and ethnic cleansing and hatred and racism. But in the last 5-6 months, it's been the worst of the last 76 years. So we have witnessing this genocide in Gaza in a sense of a military genocide, very brutal, undescribable, horrific, so barbarian, but also we see a moral genocide, the military genocide in Gaza and the moral genocide in the White House. And that moral genocide called hypocrisy and double standards. Yesterday in Washington Post, a piece by John Hudson saying that during this Gaza genocide, over 100 military packages were sent to Israel. Only 2 of them were publicized, altogether $250 million for tanks and shells and other stuff. 98 cases, 98 transfers were not even public. They were not publicized. They were just reported to the Congress, and he said over 200 times. The White House called Congress over 200 times to inform them that we are doing a good job. We send this, we send that, and all the details were given to Congress. This is why last week, Nicholas Kristof in New York Times, he wrote that this blood is in our hands. He said it clearly. When this is a genocide that's supported by military, by money, and media, and diplomacy, rejecting all the ceasefire calls in Security Council, 3 times at least. This is why he said this is our hand. It's a very clear acknowledgement. So no surprise if you see that man, the hero, Herm Boschner, he sacrificed himself saying that no more complicit and involved in this genocide. I cannot take it anymore. When someone sees this and cannot change it from inside the system with all the information, so no surprise that he welcomes death with that dignity and courage. And I didn't hear President even to acknowledge, to say even one word. He keeps talking about somebody died in Russia, and we don't know even that person, and how this happened. Right away, 500 new sanctions on Russia because somebody died, and before even any investigation telling us what happened, but when this guy in front of the camera, American from the Air Force, our son, member of our family and nation, is burning and dying, he doesn't deserve at least something to say something? Yes, over 100,000. If you compare that with 2.2, used to be 2.2, is not 2.2 million anymore. 100,000, what's the percentage? I'm not good in mathematics. It's like if it is in America, it's like 15, 16 million. I just guess, I didn't go through calculation. But something like that. It's a big, big number for Gaza. We are here actually to listen to our honorable guest and leader. And I don't want to make this long, but today I had a visitor here at the House of Wisdom, Dr. Gelen Maliko. He is a superintendent of Dearborn education system and public school. We had a good meeting. He told me that one of his desires is to update some of the schools in Dearborn that they are very old, like from 100 years ago. And he was telling me that budget is one of the challenges that he has to update the school for our children. And I told him, Dr. Glenn, it's interesting that you are worried about budget to update a school for American kids in a country that is spending trillions and trillions of dollars for all these wars and all these genocides and crimes against humanity, could not spend part of that money for updating the school, for better education, fighting poverty, better health care, some other needs of the country. Is just unbelievable. I was just talking with Honorable Dr. Jill Stein, saying that it's good that we have in this country leaders like yourself, because the whole world is watching America. And when we travel to other countries, we don't want to feel shame of being part of the nation that involved in all this genocide. When we have example like Dr. Stein, it gives us so much honor and integrity and pride that America is not just Trump and Biden and this and that. America is bigger than that. We have a great nation with great leaders. And then I told her that, isn't it nice that in the last Friday before the month of Ramadan that starts this coming Monday, in a mosque, in a night that you see our people are involved still in the prayer in the masjid, we have a ladies coming from a Jewish background in a mosque talking on the very holy night, the night of prayer. That's a good proof for the world to understand that what is going on the Holy Land is not a fight between Islam and Judaism. If it was a conflict between Islam and Judaism, Dr. Stein shouldn't be here in a mosque on the night of Friday, a holy night like tonight. That is a conflict between justice and injustice, right and wrong, truth and falsehood. When we had ISIS, we at the Islamic House of Wisdom were the first place. We had a banner outside saying, Muslims against ISIS. I told some of the rabbis just last week, I said, I wish the Jewish community and you rabbis as a leaders, religious leaders, have banners, Jews against genocide. Gladly, many of them are doing it, but we need more, not just a minority. It should be the call of majority that stand for peace. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, no justice, no peace. And no peace, no justice. They are related. If there is no peace, that means there is no justice. And if there is no justice, it means that peace is impossible. Yes, they are hijacking Judaism. So what they are doing against people in Gaza, this genocide, bombing, and now the tsunami of starvation, that is not only a crime against Palestinians, that is a crime against Judaism. That's a crime against Jews. They are not doing a favor. And finally, tonight I heard that the president is going to talk about more food for Gaza. That is interesting, that after 6 months of sending bombs to Israel, and now tonight he wants to send some bread for Gaza. That if anybody survived from bombings and all this fire, now they have a chance to have some bread. If you care for people of Gaza, you don't have to send bread. Just stop sending bombs to Israel. That is a crime against humanity. We pray for peace on such a night, especially Ramadan is coming. Peace in Palestine, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Africa. And, oh God, you are Anta Salam, wa Minka Salam, wa Laka Salam, wa Ilayka Ya'ud Salam. You are the Lord of peace. You are the source of peace and justice. And it's wonderful to have Dr. Jill Stein talk about peace and justice and against this genocide, this Holocaust, this hell, this hatred in Gaza. Thank you so much.
With the first things, thank you, Imam Ilahi, for the words of wisdom. One of the first things when I became an adult and was eligible to vote is I was looking for who do I vote for now? What do I do as a responsible American citizen? And I looked at various organizations and clubs and looked at their values. And very early on, I found that Green Party values matched my values. Unfortunately, elections after elections, they don't get the attention they deserve because of political calculations. And we are faced in our life sometimes with this dilemma: values versus maslaha, versus material gain or substantial gain. And there is a limit where you can be pragmatic in these cases. And I find it now harder than any other time to be pragmatic, and I resort back to sticking with values, since values themselves are being threatened in these cases. So Dr. Jill Stein is an American physician, activist, and politician who gained prominence as the Green Party's nominee for President of the United States in both 2012 and 2016. elections. She holds a medical degree from Harvard Medical School and has been involved in various environmental and social justice causes throughout her career. Not to delay Dr. Stein from the mic any longer, I just wanted to mention the titles or the 8 values of the Green Party, and please take a look at them and see if they match your values so you can understand the Green Party better. Ecological wisdom, social justice, grassroots democracy, nonviolence, community-based economics, and global responsibility. And the more important question, which I'm sure if Dr. Stein doesn't address in her talk, I'm sure she's going to be asked about that. As we have seen with other parties, does the Green Party stand behind these values? And do they have the track record of it? I can say they do have the track record, and we'll hear more from Dr. Stein. Thank you for coming to Dearborn, Dearborn Heights, and welcome to the stage, Dr. Stein.
Thank you, Wissam. Thank you so much, Imam Elahi, for your beautiful and inspiring words. And it is an inspiration to be here in Dearborn. So many of us have looked to Dearborn for your courage, for your moral vision, for your really elevating the hope and the vision of the nation in this very precarious, urgent moment when we are watching a genocide roll out on our iPhones and our TVs and our computer screens in incredible detail. And as America becomes aware that this is blood on our hands, we are not simply accomplices. We are full partners in this genocide that the United States, with our tax dollars, is providing 80% of the weapons here, the weapons and the bombs and the missiles, the aircraft that are delivering them. We have basically sold or given to Israel with the billions of dollars that we have provided every year for decades, and currently that's at some $3.5 billion or maybe a little bit more than that every year. And right now, in the midst of this genocide, our Congress, with the support of the White House, is trying to appropriate another $17 billion, not just to continue this genocide, but also to expand a war in the Middle East that is taking place in order to protect Israel's right, supposedly, to conduct this genocide. This is not only, this is madness. This is evil personified. This is the slaughter of potentially 2.2 million people. This is also a risk to every Israeli in the area, as well as Israel is making itself a pariah among nations and incurring the hostility and the wrath and reversing whatever progress was being made towards reconciliation with its neighbors. That is all gone. And we're looking at actually the U.S. bombing 4 countries now: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and bombing Iranian targets, although not yet Iran itself, although I think Israel is conducting operations inside Iran. But we're potentially provoking such military pushback against Israel, provoking the igniting of conflict here throughout the Middle East at a time when Iran has recently established a military alliance with Russia. So we have the complexity of a World War I type situation, a tinderbox, with the difference that there are now nuclear weapons involved, not only the weapons that Israel has illegally against international treaties, the U.S. as a nuclear power, but potentially Russia as a nuclear power. So, it's very important for all of us here in this country to know that we too are in the target hairs, because any war that could go nuclear potentially involves all of us. And just one piece of background on that Americans should know but don't know, that our criminal leadership should know but they don't know and don't care about. Just one nuclear-armed submarine carries the equivalent of 4,000 Hiroshima bombs. What could 4,000 Hiroshima bombs do? They could put us all into what's called nuclear winter. Is that a familiar term to anybody? Yeah, what it says is that in a nuclear explosion, so much debris is kicked up and injected into the upper atmosphere that it doesn't just settle down. It stays there for years. And what it does is reduce sunlight and block agricultural production. So it's as if it's winter time all over the world when things do not grow. You do not produce food. That is one of many dangers of nuclear explosions. And just one nuclear submarine worth of nuclear explosions is enough to basically starve at least half of the world's population with the reduction in food. And this is well established by nuclear scientists. This is not really subject to question. This is one of those risks of nuclear war. This is why nuclear weapons should not exist whatsoever. They should be abolished. The United States is one of those nuclear powers that has been fighting against a treaty that has now been signed by a majority of the world's nations. This is just one way in which the U.S. Conducts foreign policy in an ignorant and aggressive and domineering fashion. But the bottom line here right now is that this war is dangerous to all of us. Not to mention that the U.S. war machine costs us about half of the congressional budget right now. It's about $1 trillion per year. If you include, and that's just for the Pentagon, if you include the many other aspects of war and our so-called security state, like Homeland Security or the FBI or the CIA, the Department of State, the nuclear weapons, which are not on the Pentagon budget, if you add all this stuff up, including the cost of caring for wounded soldiers and the costs of the Veterans Administration, it's more like $1.5 trillion per year, more than half of our congressional budget. And at a time when child poverty has doubled in the last year or two, at a time when half of Americans who rent their homes are seriously financially stressed, just keeping a roof over their heads right now. Half of renters meet the official criteria for being severely stressed, that is, spending a third of their income just keeping a roof over their heads. This is unacceptable at a time when so many students do not have adequate schools. Even the physical plants are dilapidated and falling apart. Teachers are not paid adequately. Their staff is not paid adequately. And there are huge disparities across wealthy communities versus poor communities. And the reality of America now is that we're mostly poor communities. we have a 5, 10, maybe 15%, which are doing very, very well. And the stock market is doing very, very well. But most of those investments are at the upper end of the income spectrum. Most Americans right now are struggling. They don't understand so-called Bidenomics and the achievements of Bidenomics. Most Americans are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. 87 million Americans do not have adequate health care. They can't afford health insurance, and they have either no health care or incomplete health care. There are 44 million young people who are locked in student debt with no prospects of getting out. 100 million Americans who are locked into medical debt, child poverty, which has doubled. Homelessness rates are sky high. It's the highest on record. And we have a generation of young people who, according to polls, according to a Harvard study done last year, half of young people describe themselves as hopeless about the future, in part because of the climate crisis, which has been neglected, not just by Republicans. Although Democrats talk a good game, the reality is, you know, you heard about the Nord Stream pipeline that got blown up. Does that ring a bell to people? You know, the worst environmental sabotage ever in the world's history, the largest release of methane, which is the most destructive greenhouse gas. That was either undertaken by Joe Biden himself or he gave approval. And there's a variety of evidence for that, but the biggest evidence is that they have refused to investigate it and have blocked investigations, which is a pretty incriminating piece of data itself. But what that blow-up did was create a huge market. And in fact, you had, I think it was Anthony Blinken, oh, thank you, the Secretary of State, saying, you know, congratulating everyone that we had this, thank you, we now have this huge market opening up. So to make a long story short, that huge new market for American fossil fuels has led to the development of 22 new export facilities for liquid natural gas, which is methane. These 22 facilities, according to the Sierra Club, not an extremist organization, they say that that amounts to 440 new coal plants. And this is being done by Democrats. 440 new coal plants, which knocks us back to 2005 in terms of greenhouse gas production. Just to make the point that the Democrats are not the good guys that they claim to be, even on the climate. You know, and then when people say to you, well, aren't you afraid of Donald Trump? And I say, yes, I'm afraid of Donald Trump, and I'm afraid of Joe Biden, because I don't like what Trump does, but I don't like genocide. Genocide Biden, exactly. Genocide is not okay. And I don't like Trump, I don't like Genocide Joe. And they are like as if the same party, exactly. And you have Genocide Joe adopting the immigration policies as well, and separating families, and deporting migrants, and claiming to build a wall, and demonizing the migrant community. So we're getting from Genocide Joe the policies of Republicans. So, you know, I want to open things up for discussion and for your thoughts and your inputs. And I want to thank you and appreciate so much the wisdom of this community. You know, when we talk about the Islamic House of Wisdom, that's not just a name, that is a reality, that we have this community to thank. And I really share the Imam's vision about this is a moral imperative right now. And I'm so grateful as a Jew to be able to act on behalf of what I was taught. I grew up after the Holocaust. My family had migrated here before the Holocaust, actually, to escape the pogroms in Russia and Poland, where 6-year-old boys were being conscripted into the army. That's why my family came here. But I grew up very attuned to genocide and attuned to the teaching that this should never happen again to anyone. And, you know, when I saw what was going on in Gaza, you know, it's just shocking and unbelievable and beyond words. And I'm just so grateful that we have a community that is ethical, that is moral, that has a higher moral vision, and that will not be intimidated and will not be bullied into being silent, into being complicit. We are standing up. I thank you for your leadership, because America is ready for it. It's no small feat that America, that has so long been indifferent, you know, we essentially, you know, we killed 1 million people in Iraq, and I don't mean we, I mean our criminal misleaders killed 1 million people in Iraq for weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. In the follow-on to that, and this is according to the Brown University Cost of War study, so this again is not a radical fringe group, it's been 6 million people killed in the aftermath of the war in Iraq and the so-called wars on terror. The United States is conducting continuing so-called anti-terror operations in 85 countries right now around the world. This is not okay. This is not okay. And, you know, and the United States conducted some 70 regime change operations through the CIA and so on over the last several decades. According to the Congressional Research Service, the United States has used its military to intervene in other countries 250 times in the last 30 years. We do this all the time. This is just standard operating procedure, but the world will no longer tolerate it, and the U.S. is no longer the unopposed top dog. The days of U.S. empire are over. We need to move from a unipolar world to a multipolar world and be team players here that work based on international law, human rights, and diplomacy. And I want to thank this community for having the wisdom and the insight to stand up and help galvanize America. America is paying to the teeth for this aggressive foreign policy that squanders our resources and makes the world a more dangerous place for us all. America is ready to stand up. America is ready to mobilize. We're seeing this in college campuses all across the nation. We are seeing this out in the streets where millions of people are saying genocide is over. We will not allow this, and we will disrupt the effort, the machine that is continuing this genocide, like the demonstrations taking place right now outside of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. People will not allow this genocide to continue. I want to just thank this community for your amazing leadership, and I look forward to continuing to help lift up your voices and our voices together and ensure that we have an unstoppable role in the upcoming election. And a quick word about that. We will have 4 pro-genocide candidates, and we will have 1 anti-genocide campaign that can unify us. So be mindful when you have a 4 or a 5-way race, that race can be won with a plurality, which could be as low as 25%. We're currently 10% among people 35 and under. We're 10% among youth, 9% among the African American community. Word is just beginning to leak out. If we are organized and if we get down to work, we can move from uncommitted to committed to stop genocide. The sooner we begin to build, the stronger we will be and the further we will get. My hope is that we are going to turn the White House into a greenhouse, and we will all be better for it. Even if we don't win the election, we will win the day for making clear that genocide is no longer a political option. It will be contested, it will be fought, and we will have a political coalition, an alliance that is anchored in this moral vision against war, against genocide, on behalf of working people, social, economic, racial, and climate justice. We will have that coalition that will be working together to prevail. Until we do, we will make this happen and work together to do so. Thank you so much. Let me open this up at this point. Either way, whatever you recommend. Yeah.
Would you like to sit and answer?
Sure. That sounds great. Sure. Great, thank you.
All right, we're going to open the floor for questions and comments. Yes.
Hello and welcome to Dearborn Heights. We appreciate you coming here. We have been looking up to you for a long time. So what is driving, the country are the global corporation interests, and this is what has been, and the fact that we have two-party system, so we're just basically going back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats. So we feel like we are stuck between them, and the fight of the Green Party, it seems like, will not result in any fruitful thing so soon. It seems like we're going to end up either with Trump or Biden in November. But my question is, why the Green Party hasn't been successful in getting people in Congress, as Congress people, as senators? Like, for example, yourself, you haven't ran for that position before. And why is that not a strategy for the Green Party?
Great question. Thank you so much for that. The Green Party currently has about 120 local elected officials. So school boards, city councils, soil and water commissioners, things of that sort. We run into a lot of resistance because we are very much what the system is afraid of. And so all sorts of tools come into play to suppress us. And let me just set the context here, because the Green Party seems very weak until you consider what has happened to every other independent, non-corporate party that threatens the hegemony of corporate rule. Usually what happens, and you can look at, for example, the Labor Party, which launched around the same time as the Green Party in the 1980s, but they had a very big budget and a lot of institutional support. They could never get past the spoiler accusation. They never ran candidates, and they were gone within 10 years. Peace and Freedom Party is another example of a left-leaning, progressive, non-corporate party that reflected, again, the public interest. Their agenda is very similar to Greens. We've been more kind of an environmental party as well as a social and economic justice party, but otherwise we're quite similar. There was a time when they had access to the ballot on about 15, maybe 18 states, I think, at one point, maybe 15 years ago, and they've been beaten back to where they only exist now in one state, in California. The socialist parties, which had mayors, they had senators, they had congressmen and women, and lots of local officials, they really pushed policy forward in many ways, the 40-hour week, child labor laws, and so on. They were doing very well in the early 1900s when the rules were changed in order to prevent challengers to the powers that be. They were wiped back, so they now represent only a city council here and there in occasional cities. So the playing field is very steeply tilted against public interest politics. So in the face of that, the Green Party is unique in that we have maintained the ability to challenge power for decades, and we've gotten better at it. We have been ahead of the curve. The current progressive agenda now, calling for a Green New Deal, calling for voting reform, calling for transformation of our foreign policy so that it's not brute militarism and military force. We're calling for steep reductions in our military budget and spending that money on true security. We originated the call for Medicare for all, that is, for health care as a human right for everyone. Every one of these policies, which has now been embraced by the progressive agenda, came from the Green Party. So we have been ahead of the curve. In 2012, our campaign launched the call to abolish student debt. We bailed out Wall Street. We can bail out a generation of students. We can provide public higher education for free. We know from the GI Bill that every dollar we invest in education is returned with $7 worth of economic development for the whole economy. So we have launched these policies. We have been successful in changing the agenda. But Democrats and Republicans and people who are on the corporate payroll are not going to implement those policies. So my response basically is that we are doing the work. I think we are at a world-changing moment right now. It's time to move from lip service to these policies to actually implementing them. The American people are hungry for that agenda, and the fact of genocide is a red line for every human being whose eyes are open. This is a transformational moment. We know that the majority of the American public, 68% according to a Reuters poll, wants a ceasefire now and a diplomatic solution. 50% of the American public has been persuaded this is genocide that Israel and the U.S. are conducting. So we've never had a transformational moment like this. We think it's really important to push the envelope on all fronts. We have many candidates now who are running for Congress, for Senate, for state-level offices and city councils and so on. And I encourage more people to run, and if you'd like to talk with us, we are, that's what we're about, is creating a full political movement that can represent us at all levels of our community. This is the time to make that happen. Thank you.
Hello. Nice to see you again, Doctor. Seeing this genocide that's going on and how many people is I want to say control, opposition, you know, and I just want to know, as a leader, as the president, what would you do in order to stop something like AIPAC? Would you make them register as a foreign agency so we can, you know, move forward with them having a chokehold on our politicians? Because I think this is going to continue if we have these foreign agencies donating money and whatever else promises to these politicians, and they're going to deliver every time. So what would you do if you had the power to do anything?
Exactly. Well, first of all, on day one, the president can make a phone call and stop this genocide right now. The president has the power to do that. Joe Biden needs to take the example of Ronald Reagan and stand up and stop this war. Ronald Reagan did that in the 1980s, making a phone call to Menachem Begin saying, "Bring your troops home from Lebanon, enough of this destructive war." Joe Biden can do that right now. Joe Biden has all the power in the world, not only to just assert his moral influence, but also to stop the transfer of weapons. Whether Congress has appropriated money or not, the president can stop the continuing transfer of weapons, which, by the way, is against U.S. law. U.S. law prohibits the transfer of weapons to countries that are violating international law, and there is no question that Israel is conducting massive war crimes, including ethnic cleansing and genocide, and actually every international law on the books, from disproportionate power to home demolitions to the use of food as a weapon. On every count, this war and Israel is violating international law and conducting war crimes. So all resources should end to Israel, starting months ago, in fact. So there are plenty of ways to stop this war. And to your point about AIPAC, absolutely, AIPAC should be classified as a foreign lobbying organization. And in fact, they were on their way to being so classified. President Kennedy was intent on doing that before he was assassinated, unfortunately. Otherwise, AIPAC would have been sidelined long ago, and they should be. In the meantime, they should be called out. If nothing else, the president has the bully pulpit, and the president can speak truth to power, and the press can't really suppress what the president says. So there's enormous power in the hands of the president to stop the control of AIPAC over Congress, also to stop the control of the war profiteers over Congress, which is another very powerful, financial influence, which is corrupting our Congress. And what needs to happen in the realm of foreign policy also needs to happen on healthcare and the real estate industry and housing and higher education and pharmaceuticals across the board. We need to be true to the promise of democracy. Right now we have the best democracy money can buy. That is no democracy at all. This can be reversed on many counts. We need to get the money out of politics. We need public financing of our elections, and we need to close the revolving door between corporations and our elected positions, as well as our regulatory agencies. It's not rocket science how to fix this. And when Barack Obama was elected, he broke a lot of barriers to get into office. He had a grassroots movement which was very powerful and on fire. Unfortunately, he put his ground troops on the shelf the moment he was elected. And his first appointment was actually Larry Summers, who was really the architect of the regulatory changes that enabled the Wall Street meltdown. So it was clear who his real allegiance was to the moment he was elected. And so for us, it would be a different story. And I would just put everybody on notice that if we do the work to get elected, nobody is going home on election day. Our work only begins at that point. Thank you. Okay.
Hello. Thank you so much for coming in today. It's a really huge pleasure. Another one too? Okay. So, I mean, in this country, like every issue has a different side. There's, whether it's in the environment, taxes, gay marriage, abortion, there's the left and the right side. But when it comes to Israel, surprisingly, they have captured both sides of the political aisle. We've seen this when we've noticed some progressive Democrats, such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, other members of the squad, who we thought would be better allies of the Israeli-Palestinian issue, all of a sudden start voting with the establishment. So my question is, right now you're a Green Party, you're the forefront of the Green Party, and hopefully one day we will start having Green Party congresswomen and men and hopefully senators one day, or state senators. What do you guys have some type of platform that would disallow things like this from happening? And I just want to know what your idea on because I'm tired of it. When we start in 2018, I was excited to see more people that had our complexion in the White House and the Congress, and I've just started seeing that they're still voting the same way that they were voting 10 years ago. So what changes would you make?
Great, thank you so much. Lots of changes across the board. Greens are, above all, dedicated to getting big money out of politics and ending the culture of influence. We have a system of legalized bribery, and it's well established by all sorts of academic research. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, it's very clear that what drives policy is campaign contributions and money on lobbyists. And that is the driver of the congressional agenda. When Wall Street crashed in 2008, calls were running something like 90-1 against bailing out Wall Street. But it took Congress 1 week to bail out Wall Street to the tune of trillions of dollars. That's what the drivers are. And the Green Party does not accept corporate money. We don't accept big donations. We do not approve of super PACs. So we close the door on this very corrupting influence. And we think it's not okay to say, oh, I'm different, I will get money out of politics, but in the meantime, I'm going to take the big bribes of industry, which is the approach of Robert F. Kennedy, who is saying that, I'll get money out of politics, trust me, but meanwhile, he's got a big super PAC where half the money, a $50 million super PAC, half the money is coming from 2 donors. So, you can't have it both ways, and so we have always walked the walk. When I first ran, I was tricked into running a couple times. When I was first tricked into running, I ran as a Green, and then I was approached by my state representative afterwards. I was running then my second race for state representative, and I was approached, would I please run as a Democrat? And I said no, because in my home state, the Democrats had killed campaign finance reform. And I was part of an effort to pass the so-called clean elections law that provided money outside of a corporate system. We provided public money so that candidates can run campaigns with integrity without having to beg corporations for sponsorship. We passed that law as a referendum by a 2-to-1 margin, and then the Democrats, the progressive Democrats in my home state, killed that law, which would have addressed, the fundamental problem in the corruption of our system. So I was pretty persuaded early on that if the progressive Democrats were fighting the solution to the fundamental corruption here, they were beyond the pale. And that was back in the year 2001 That was in 2002. And that has been borne out. We are not seeing a system that's kind of getting better no matter who gets elected. It's not getting better. It's only getting more and more into the pockets of the billionaires and the bankers, and money is only getting more and more concentrated in this country. So the right thing is not happening. And we very much need to stand up to demand that the system be reformed so that our elected officials are not being systematically bribed the way that they are now. So when you ask, what are the indications, where does the Green Party stand, we have a very clear track record, and we have always upheld the principle of being a party that is of, by, and for the people, not of, by, and for the billionaires, which is the way that our current, two-party system is run. We call them the parties of war and Wall Street. That's what they've been. That's what they continue to be. What you see is where we're going. As Gaza goes, we all go. This is a question of whether the murder and torture, this isn't just murder, this is torture. This is systematic torture of 2.2 million people. I'm a healthcare provider. I feel like I've been on a death watch here, and people have been miraculously defying death with incredible resilience and grace. It's just mind-boggling how people have maintained their humanity in the line of fire, directly under fire. It's just staggering. And it's odd that people being genocided should be our inspiration, but they are. They absolutely are. And they're a sign to us of the courage that we need to show. We're here on the easy side, in the heart of the empire. We too must stand up and say no to this empire and point the way forward to the world that we deserve.
Hi, Dr. Jill. My name is Hadi Mahbouba. Thank you so much for coming here. It's such an honor to meet you and listening to you and learning about your stance. I'm going to be frank with you. As a previous voter of both parties, I don't stand allegiance to any Democratic nor Republican, because as a Muslim American, I didn't find that any party really solely aligned with my beliefs and my principles. And that being said, is that I voted for Trump in 2016. And in 2020, I campaigned proactively to get Biden in office. And so where I'm coming from is that I've had the experience in knowing where presidential candidates will say the talk, will do the walk, but when it comes to the action, they definitely are hypocritical in nature and do not commit to their words. And so Biden previously promised us about student loans and how he will cancel them, and he has not done that. And you have also focused your stand on that as well. And in addition to right now what is going on in Palestine, it is the most humanitarian crisis of the world, and it is not a U.S. foreign policy issue. It's more of an American policy issue, because it is our U.S. tax dollars that are funding this genocide and proactively doing so. And the rhetoric that has been going on is that there's even been an infringement of freedom of speech, where peaceful protesters have been arrested for saying no to genocide. And as an American, and as a Muslim American specifically, I do not feel safe. I do not feel that my values are being represented or able to speak out against something that is clearly against human nature, and it goes against our civil rights. And so, to quote Martin Luther King Jr., "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So how will you determine that course of direction with the Green Party in your U.S. foreign policy stance? And I know that you're not a believer of the U.S. intervention in Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan, but how are you actually going to change that? And in terms of, what is the solution to this ongoing conflict that is going on? I would say conflict, but we all know that it's a genocide. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to your answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think the solution is that we are a democracy. We claim to be a democracy. I mean, we are not. We are a very imperfect democracy, and we are losing our democracy as well. As you've mentioned, we are seeing an all-out assault on our freedom of speech, our right to protest, our privacy rights, the money capturing our election system. Our democracy is in an all-out crisis, and our policies, including our foreign policy, reflect that crisis. But fortunately, we are in a moment now where the American public is in agreement. The American public is demanding an end to this genocide. So our challenge is to get into positions of power where we can implement the will of the people. And because we have the will of the people, because history is writing this story in front of our very eyes, it's not rocket science about how to move this policy forward. Simply by enforcing existing U.S. law that prohibits the sale of weapons and giving aid to countries that are war criminals, we can stop this aid. There will be many challenges going forward. We also have the disaster of Ukraine to deal with, the Cold War that's being ginned up right now with China, gun violence, exactly. But the American people are demanding solutions to that, and Congress can't act. Yet we know from polls that there is strong public support for so-called common sense gun protections and security reforms, for getting rid of assault weapons, for example, for ensuring that there are safety locks, that weapons need to be stored, that there are laws that can remove weapons from domestic abusers and other people who are not in a qualified position to be holding weapons. So there are reforms that can be implemented on all of these counts. And if we are lucky enough to be in a position in the White House, we will have allies in Congress, but we will especially have allies in the grassroots and in the movements. And as president, I would be organizer-in-chief, the organizer that Barack Obama had promised to be and that he would not actually be at the end of the day. So we will be coordinating our efforts to pressure our elected officials into voting on behalf of their constituents. So we do not hold public hearings now on Gaza, on Ukraine, on health care. We no longer hold public hearings at the congressional level. Our elected representatives do not hold town hall meetings to be instructed by their constituents as to how they should vote and so on. So on all of these counts, there are very strong pressures that we can bring to bear to change this. And that includes executive actions that the president can take. For example, by ending the delivery of weapons right now and invoking U.S. law, which says that weapons cannot be delivered to human rights abusers right now. So there are many things we can do. They want to convince us that we are powerless. I think it's very important to reject their propaganda of hopelessness and powerlessness. They want this community to be silent. They want the American people to be silent, and we refuse. We are going to stand up and demand a democracy to move forward into the future.
Thank you, Doctor. By a show of hands, who has questions? Okay. We're supposed to finish at 8:30. We'll extend it for about 5 to 7 minutes.
Welcome, Dr. Stein, with our Arab Muslim community in Dearborn and Dearborn Heights. I'm from Dearborn Heights. My question was part of it, the previous lady, she asked you. I want to add something. We voted to Biden and he turned to genocide, bad genocide. Now, how are you going to build the trust between you and us after we voted for Biden? that you will not do same Biden did regarding Israel relationship with USA? Thank you.
Yes, very important question. How do we build trust? In my view, and I welcome scrutiny over my stances and my positions on the issues which have been consistent. As long as I have been involved in the political process, and even before being involved in the political process, I have been an anti-war activist since my earliest days in high school when I fought against the war in Vietnam, against the war in Iraq. I have been an activist with Physicians for Social Responsibility, fighting to put all nuclear weapons on the shelf, to dismantle them. I've been consistent really throughout my life, and I am not a politician. I don't need to be elected to office. Why am I doing this? As a mother, very concerned about the future of all of our children who do not currently have a future together. So, I certainly welcome scrutiny over my positions, which have been absolutely consistent. And when I was, subject to that bribery, come into the Democratic Party and we will support your election, I declined. I refused. I'm not here to compromise and achieve some kind of success. I'm too old for that. I'm not a young person trying to make my way in the world. I'm someone at the other end trying to just do right by our community. And I would say that, we're all sticking our necks out here to be taking the positions that we're taking. And I don't think any of us do this casually. And at the end of the day, we need to work together. The sooner the better. And in my experience, I worked as a medical doctor for decades and saw how much our healthcare system was failing. And not only that, but that we have an economy and a society that makes people sick. It's not just that our healthcare system doesn't take care of us, but we have sick corporate nutrition, food system, community violence. Poverty is the number 4 killer of people in this country. We do so many things that are just, wrong and wrong-headed. So I moved from being a doctor practicing clinical medicine to practicing political medicine, because I found that when you got involved to try to change these causes of illness, whether it's cleaning up pollution or addressing poverty, you can't do it. The powers that be won't allow you to do it, and they will undermine you every step of the way, even if you're not political, even if you're just there as in whatever professional capacity, as a doctor trying to advocate for clean air, let's deal with the asthma epidemic. They won't let you do it. They will do everything in their power to serve their corporate donors. And that's what moved me from being a doctor of clinical medicine to political medicine, realizing that we have to address the mother of all illnesses, our political system, if we are going to fix the things that are literally killing us. So that's just to clarify that where I'm coming from in this. And I found that when I started working in the world of politics and running for office, it was totally different from how it's made out to be. The mainstream parties run a very different kind of politics. It's a politics dictated by their big donors, and they all smell like rats. If you've ever been close to a politician in the mainstream system, you feel like you need to go home and take a shower. Like if you go to the State House or to Congress, you feel like you're getting slimed, I have to say, and you feel like you have to go home and wash it off. And I have not had that experience. I feel like when people get close up, they can smell if you're a rat or not. And I've found that process has been very energizing, build solidarity, and I really welcome people to work with us and, find out face to face, shoulder to shoulder, do we have integrity and do we have respect, and are we building a community with dignity and human rights? I think at the end of the day, that is the test right there.
All right, we have 2 more questions. Thank you, Dr. Stein. That will finalize the evening. Before I give the next question, I just wanted to mention, Doctor, as far as practically when we go and vote, we know that we might not get to the point where we win the elections. What does 5%, what does 15% make a difference?
Great. Okay, terrific question. And I'll just say quickly that there are many ways that we win the day, even if we don't win the White House. It will take a kind of black swan event for us to win the White House. It's not impossible. And when you have a 4 or 5 way split going on and you have many genocide candidates, they may be splitting the genocide vote, and it may be possible for us to win this election with as little as 25% of the vote. So I wouldn't rule it out. But even if we don't win the White House, if we get to mere 5%, which is already what we're running at, the Green Party is polling at 5% right now nationally, that alone can qualify us for a big infusion of public money in the next presidential election. So we would be starting out the next presidential election with about $20 million in the bank, which would put us in a stronger position than we've ever been in. Currently, we are about to qualify for public funding as well, and that's simply from collecting enough contributions that we meet the criteria. When we meet that criteria, then basically the public money will double what we have brought in so far. And that will also, the big guys, they run billion-dollar campaigns sponsored by billionaires and bankers and so on. So they have very corrupted sources that are constraining what they can do. We're running on small donations for the most part. We have some larger donors, but we don't engage in the legal runaround that they do. They have special ways to dodge the laws. So a single donor can donate $600,000 or more to Joe Biden or Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, et cetera. They have special ways they can donate a lot of money. We don't do that. We observe the strict regulations that says $3,300 is the maximum. So technically, we are a small donor campaign. We will have a big infusion of cash once we get to a certain critical donation level, and that will double our money. We do much more with the dollar. We run a very efficient, low-budget campaign. My deputy campaign manager here that I want to acknowledge as being my guardian angel, Kelly Merrill, who is traveling with me. We're driving ourselves around the country here. We are in a car, and we've got our little ice chest, and we're keeping our food warm. We're surviving mostly on Middle Eastern food because it's definitely the best food out there, especially when you're on the road. Keeps you healthy and sane. So we're running a very efficient campaign. We know that we're currently on the ballot in 21 states with a few more that are just now being processed. We expect that number to go up. But that happens to include some of the most difficult, big, and expensive states like Texas and California and Florida and Arizona. So we actually have 75% of the work already done, and we can finish it up with about $1 million. Robert F. Kennedy says he can get on the ballot for $20 million. So that's just to make the point. We do things efficiently. We have people power. We don't have billionaire power. We have people power, and we can do things efficiently. So I feel like there is definitely a pathway to go from here to there. And who was going to be next? Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi. I wish my verbal English was enough strong
It's
to
great.
express my idea. You mentioned a huge risk, the most bigger risk of the world, which is the atomic bomb. I'm recently American, and I am from Lebanon.
Okay.
And we know that Israel has hundreds of atomic bombs. And the organization, international organization that is responsible to investigate this issue
Yes,
says nothing.
that's right.
In fact, maybe, I am not sure, Israel is not on the list of countries that own atomic bomb. It means the dangerous aspect of this country is not only against Lebanon, Palestine, and the Middle East. Myself, my family house has been destroyed 3 times by Israel.
So sorry.
It's not the matter now. But Israel now is can present dangerous role, not only in the area, near area, but at the international level. Myself, I have no statistics, but I wonder if Israel cannot reach far. This is let me think that we have to work with Jewish people, free thinking of Jewish people, because Israel is playing this dirty business on their name. Not only they send them to die in Gaza or in Lebanon or everywhere, but we don't have atomic bomb to put it in a museum. We own this to use it, and they will use it by the name of Jewish. Finally, is your party has any vision to work with the free-thinking Jewish people? I will work with you. I am not a Jewish, but I will work with you. In case in your program has this item, I will work with you.
Thank you so much. And I'll just say briefly, absolutely, we work closely with Miko Peled. I don't know if you know him. He is an Israeli Jew who is extremely anti-Zionist. He is a writer, an author. He's also the son of a famous Israeli general who won the 1967 war. Yes. So in the Green Party, we had a big dialogue about Israel, about BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, about a one-state solution. And the Green Party did a lot of internal dialogue and discussion, and we came to a consensus to support Palestinian human rights, to condemn Zionism. It's not Judaism, it's Zionism, which is not Judaism. And to say that it is anti-Semitic to oppose genocide, we view that as the most anti-Semitic thing that you could possibly say. So we stand up against those accusations of anti-Semitism. And we work with Jewish Voice for Peace. We have been on the front lines of calling for peace and the abolition of nuclear weapons for Israel, for the United States, really for all countries. This is a terrible danger, and yes, it is a problem, and it will require a lot of careful strategy for how we dismantle those nuclear weapons and how we get countries to give them up. I think it's very important that we move to sanctions now against Israel for conducting genocide. We need to move to massive economic sanctions, not only stopping the delivery of weapons, but we need to use every nonviolent tool available to defuse this conflict as quickly as possible. And absolutely, this should be a coalition of all people of faith, of all faiths, people who believe in human rights and humanity. This is what's on the line for all of us. And Gaza is a critical test right now, whether we're going to have a world that respects and obeys international law, or whether we will abide by the law of the jungle, and whoever is most powerful will rule. And the U.S. is no longer in that position of being the sole most powerful nation in the world. So it's a very important time to be educating everyone here that we are all in the crosshairs of what's happening in Gaza right now. Thank you.
I voted for you in the past, and I will vote for you again.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Doctor. Thank you for being here with us tonight. I have a quick question, and I think maybe it's a question beyond what time is left, but what's the Green Party's view and your views about electoral reform? As you know, part of the issues we have is how the electoral system is set, which actually supports this kind of revolving door election cycle after cycle. So I would like to know what is your view and the Green Party's view about reform.
Thank you. Yes, we have a very well developed, set of solutions that could be implemented right now. And key among them is a reform called ranked choice voting, which has been adopted by the whole state of Maine. It's going to be on the ballot in Oregon coming up this November. It's been adopted by major cities, most recently Boulder, Colorado. Major cities all over the country. New York City uses it, but only for their primaries, because the Democrats are very threatened by this because it gets rid of the fear thing. Ranked choice voting says you can rank your choices and you never have to worry, because if your first choice is an underdog, if the underdog loses, your vote is automatically reassigned to your second choice. That's a simplistic way of explaining it, but that's kind of the quickest way. And it ensures you're never going to have a wasted vote. It also gets rid of the fear that your vote is inadvertently going to help someone that that you're afraid of. It gets rid of the fear factor. It gets rid of any possibility of so-called spoiling the election or splitting the vote. That can't happen under ranked choice voting. The Democrats don't like that because they rely on fear. They extort your vote based on threats. And why do they do that? They do that because they are very threatened by what we offer as a people's party. So they rely on being able to demonize us and scaring people and extorting the vote. So yes, we have that solution. That solution would pass. Right now the Democrats are fighting it in Washington, D.C., where the people have placed it on the ballot as a referendum. It is a great thing. It is spreading all over the nation right now. It's being adopted first at the community level, but now more and more states as well. It should be used at all levels of government, so we can just go to the polls and vote based on your values and your vision, not on your fears. The politics of fear has brought us everything that we were afraid of. It doesn't move us forward. As a democracy, we need a vision of where we're going and what our values are. Right now, most people vote based on who they are most afraid of, and they vote for the other guy. That doesn't drive us forward in a rational and informative way. So ranked choice voting would do that. There are many other reforms, like making access to the ballot reasonable. Right now, we have to go out and collect in some states as much as 80,000 signatures, which is a lot to do. In New York City, we have to do it, in New York State, rather, we've got to do that within 6 weeks. All this is expensive, and its purpose is to defend the powers that be against challengers. But we should have challengers. The Green Party does not seek to dominate the political landscape. Our goal is multi-partisan democracy. Without the money, put the people back in, get the big money out, and let's go to work here. You know, we've got a world to save, and ultimately it depends on election reforms. So we can do this. It's not rocket science.
Dr. Jill Stein, thank you on behalf of the community. Thank you for traveling the country representing our values, and our hearts and spirit and actions are with you and what you stand for.
Thank you
very
so much. And let me invite anyone who would like to do a group selfie right up here, and we'll all kind of squeeze together and do a photo for the history books.
We're going to do a group photo, and then Dr. Stein will be here for a few minutes if you want to have one-on-one with her. Thank you.